Joining me now are two members of the crossbench who've campaigned passionately on the National Anti-Corruption Commission, Independents Kate Chaney and Allegra Spender. Great to have you both in the studio. Thanks for coming in. Kate, first to you, is this proposal good enough in your view? Particularly, I think, of the hurdle for public hearings.
Look, I think on balance, it's a pretty good package, and we really need to celebrate the fact that we've come this far, and that's largely due to the efforts of the crossbench. There are definitely still some things that we would like to see made more robust, and public hearings is one of those things.
Is that do you share that view on the public hearings front? Is the hurdle too great to have those?
Look, I'd say the same as Kate. I think that this is a great achievement to get to this stage, and I congratulate the PM and I congratulate the Attorney General and the government to getting here, and for those crossbenchers, because this is the first time we've had a National Integrity Commission legislation introduced into the Parliament by government, because previously it's always been the crossbench. In terms of the public hearings, you know, my view is that sunshine is important. You look in New South Wales, they do have a better test for public hearings, and we actually have more reports. We've had 39 reports in New South Wales versus I think only 14 reports in Victoria, which has the exceptional circumstances that is more like this model. So I think that we should actually change that model, and I will be looking very clearly in terms of what the committee is doing in this space.
Are you concerned, though, with the comment made by the attorney and certainly the opposition as well, that they're worried about potential to damage reputations before any finding of guilt or corruption is made? Absolutely.
I mean, I think that no one wants to see reputations ruined unnecessarily, but there are two tests in the draft bill at the moment, in that bill. The first is the public interest test, and many of the different jurisdictions across Australia have that, and it's up to the Commissioner to decide if it's in the public interest, and there's a list of criteria that he or she can take into account. And then on top of that, there's this exceptional circumstances test, and my big concern about that is that there's no definition of what exceptional circumstances are, and it will create the opportunity for challenge in the courts before there is any public hearing. And I think the public interest test on its own is probably adequate.
Do you have the similar view when it comes to that reputational damage question? Because we have seen it from time to time at corruption commissions around the country that someone who might be entirely innocent is dragged through the mud.
Look, if you look at New South Wales, only 5% of the hearings are actually public, and I think that I believe that public hearings should be used, carefully and thoughtfully, and it should be genuinely in the public interest. And we should be considering what are the other mechanisms to make sure that reputations aren't unfairly besmirched, because it's a really it's a significant concern. But let's be honest, corruption across government is also a very significant, serious issue. And I've already had emails from people in my electorate who are saying they want this sense of public openness around this, because this is really important in trust in our institutions and in our politicians.
So much will come down to the Commissioner. It's going to be a very powerful role in our system. Are you satisfied with the mechanism with which the Attorney General has proposed the appointment of the Commissioner? Because if it does stand, as Kate Chaney said, it's a subjective rule, that exceptional circumstances, it's going to come down to the view of the Commissioner.
Look, I think that I'm really positive, and that the committee that is going to has oversight of the Commission and the Commissioner is a truly multi-partisan committee, and I think it's going to have balance between the government of the day as well as the opposition, and two spaces for the crossbench. I think that is really positive. I still think that we could move to a stage where the chair doesn't have the casting vote in that space, so that it is truly multi-partisan in terms of any final answers, because I think it's really important that that corruption is not a partisan issue, that the NACC is never used for political motives, and I think that's the trust that the community wants.
That mood that you spoke about, I know it was a key part in your campaign as well, wasn't it? The integrity issue. Obviously climate was one, but where did this rank, and is it still something that resonates with voters in Curtin?
Absolutely. It was the number one or two issue for people in my electorate, especially in the older voters. Integrity and what they'd seen over the last decade was really, really important to them to rebuild that trust. I held a community forum on the integrity model a month or two ago, and we sold all the tickets, or they were free tickets, but it booked out in a day. 130 people turned up on a Tuesday night to talk about the ins and outs of the model. There's incredible interest in the community about this issue.
And has there been appropriate consultation with the crossbench from the government?
I think there has been. We've had a number of conversations with the Attorney-General and expressed our views. After the community forum that I held, the Attorney-General said, please send through the findings from that. And I sent through, you know, what I'd heard from my community. I think when we look at the big ticket items that have been addressed in the bill, it's clear that has been heard. And that is a broad definition, broad powers, the oversight, referral from the public, and also that pro-integrity role, which is an educative role, beyond just the investigations, but also to educate everyone about what is corruption and what's acceptable and what's not.
Do you think that it's appropriate that the major parties, the parties of government, are signing up to this from the get-go, that we don't have a situation where one of the major parties seeks to block it? Because obviously you want buy-in, don't you?
Yeah. Look, I think the community wants actually the whole of the parliament to get behind this. And I think that's really important. I think that's what the community really is seeking, that we seek that. So I'm looking forward to, you know, doing that. I certainly hope that the coalition stays on board in relation to this. And I think through this committee process, we need to really interrogate a few of the areas where I think still improvement is possible. But I think overall it's a really strong model.
The extent to which corruption is looked at, they're talking about systemic and serious corruption. Are these definitions appropriate, or do you think they should be going further and looking at things like pork barrelling?
Look, I think it's serious or systemic corruption, and I think, you know, the Attorney-General said this week that could encompass pork barrelling if the Commissioner says that that fits within that model of that definition. And so I think it's absolutely right to say, you know, this is up to the Commissioner to determine if it's serious or systemic. I don't, you know, and I think we shouldn't try and carve it out. I think we should leave it for the Commissioner to determine where that sits. So,
given this has been a big part of both your campaign and yours, Allegra Spender, how do you now redefine your presence in the Parliament? Because it's been a big 6 months. You've been a part of contributing to that climate bill, now this bill. Where do you go to now in terms of what you're pushing for within the place?
I think in my electorate there was a real thirst for having a representative who was values aligned, and that means bringing those values to issues as they come up. And there will be new issues and new events over the course of the 3 years, but that is, you know, and those values are integrity, inclusion, being economically sensible, but also being compassionate. And so I suppose it's taking those values to every issue that comes up and continuing to represent my electorate in that way.
And with this committee process now, before the bill is voted on within the Parliament, I think before the end of the year, the government's still hoping for that. What will you be seeking to articulate to that committee through your submission?
I'll be having another round of engagement with my community and using that to put together a submission to focus on the ways that I think we can improve that bill and make it even better and feed that into the process. And I don't want to see that inquiry rushed because of some arbitrary deadline. We need to make sure there is broad engagement across the community on the structure and the model.
Yeah, well, I guess it makes sense, doesn't it, to rush it before Christmas just for the sake of it, when this is going to be a part of the landscape for many years to come.
Absolutely, and I'm similarly to Kate. I'm next week bringing some of my community together, organise a forum to discuss this bill, and I will be using this also as the basis for my submission to the committee as well, because it's really important that the voice of the people are heard in relation to the design of this bill. I think we've come a really long way. Let's make sure that we, you know, deliver that on the final details.
It was raised, I know, in the Wentworth debate at the Sydney Cricket Ground, where this issue was brought up. It was obviously brought up with you many times. How do you redefine your your commitment and presence here on behalf of Wentworth.
Yeah.
It's the same question to what I asked
Yes.
Kate.
Look, I think it's, a similar piece in terms of what are the values of the community. I mean, there's much more work to be done on climate, let's be honest, and EVs is going to be absolutely crucial to that. Integrity, you look at things like political donations, this is another area that my community is very vocal of. They did not like the fact that Clive Palmer, one individual, could spend $100 million on elections. But there are also broader issues such as tax reform, because it's an economic community, as well as parental leave, which are important issues to the families in my community, and also refugees. So there are a lot of other issues that are going to be absolutely crucial to this parliament as well.
Okay, well, I very much appreciate your time. It's a big day for the parliament, and certainly for your independent presence here. Kate Chaney, Allegra Spender, thank you both. Appreciate it. And thank you for your company at home. Stay with